if you have a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, there was a moment. There was a time that it happened. Whether it was with great fanfare or just through the daily moments of life. At some point along life's way, God met with you. Now, if you're here today and you're like, well, I don't believe in Jesus, I don't believe in God. If you were to simply say, God, if you're real, will you reveal yourself to me? I guarantee you'll have one of those moments. That's the big question, though. Most people don't want to ask that question, because if you ask that question, then your life's going to get radicalized. It's going to change. Because God is real. Not a figment of imagination, not just a myth. He's real. And if we are simply available enough for God to reveal himself to us, then he's going to. That's my favorite thing with people. I'm like, well, do you really want to know if the possibility of there being an absolute truth, would you be interested in that? Sure, well, why don't you just ask God if he's real to reveal himself to you? Because if you really want to know the truth, I mean, what does it hurt? It's an amazing thing when that happens. Because most people are too proud to say, no, I don't want to really know if there's a God, Because then they're proving that they don't want to know the truth. That simple prayer. I don't know if you're real, God. Maybe these people are all delusional. I think they might be. But if you're real, reveal yourself to me. But after that, what happens? Look what happens for Paul. At this point, he's still Saul in verse 20. Immediately he preached the Christ in the synagogue, that he was the Son of God. Then all who heard were amazed and said, is this not he who destroyed those who called on this name in Jerusalem, and has come here for that purpose, that he might bring them bound to the chief priests? Saul increased all the more in strength and confounded the Jews who dwelt in Damascus, proving that this Jesus is the Christ. What did Paul do immediately? He proclaimed that Jesus was the Christ. Now, that's pretty powerful, isn't it? After he came to know Jesus, the first thing he does immediately is he starts to tell people that Jesus is the Christ. Now, he's in the synagogue. That was the local meeting place for people who believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That was the marketplace. That was the center of the social culture of that day. In our day, the synagogue isn't. There's a whole lot of other cultural centers, community centers, Starbucks, Barnes & Nobles. Here in Mill Valley, you have the Depot. Wherever it is that people congregate, that's where Paul was. He was in the synagogue. And immediately he told people that Jesus is the Christ. This is what is called evangelism. Evangelism is simply telling people the good news. In Greek, it's the word evangel. That's where you get evangelism. That good news, simply that Jesus is the Christ. That this man, Jesus of Nazareth, who walked on the earth 2,000 years ago, who we have spoken about in the Gospels, explained through the letters of Paul and the other apostles to the churches, this man is the Christ. That means that he is God's anointed one. That's the gospel. Simply that statement. It's not an open and shut way to understand everything about Christian theology. It is simply the reality that Jesus is different from everybody else. That's simple reality. Now, you might say, well, man, I always come to church and you guys are always guilting us and telling people about Jesus. And, don't you pastors ever get bored of that? Do they just teach you how to guilt us to do that? And listen, we have a good tool belt of guilt tactics. Let's be honest. I mean, it's almost like they just you're called to be a pastor and you just get the guilt. And I don't want to guilt you guys into sharing about Jesus. I just want to talk about something today. Listen, the things that you guys are passionate about, you're going to talk about. That's just the reality of it. All you have to do is watch or follow someone's Facebook statuses or their tweets or whatever, and you find out very quickly what somebody is passionate about. When it's American Idol night, I don't have to watch it because right as someone gets voted off the show, there's 900, I can't believe my favorite person just got voted off of it. Maybe you just started a new workout regimen and you just feel great. And the next time you're talking to somebody, they'll say, what's up? I just started this workout regimen. I feel great. And they start explaining it to you, right? Because something that is impacting your life in a positive way is something that you want to talk about, isn't it? The things that are important to us, the things that are moving our hearts, that are radicalizing and changing our lives, we're going to share about that. For the Apostle Paul, when he met Jesus on the road to Damascus, he had just had an experience that had absolutely made his entire life, and he couldn't keep it to himself. See, the reason I believe that evangelism doesn't happen in the church is not because people don't believe it. It's because they do believe it, but they're not experiencing God. Because if you experience God, if you have a vibrant, robust relationship with God, you're going to tell somebody about it. And it's not going to be this forced, like, okay, I know that Pastor Daniel's going to ask me if I shared the gospel this week. And so, okay, just like I'm going to tough this thing out, you know? It's like eating your Brussels sprouts or something. You remember what it was like growing up? You know, or maybe you're on like a new diet and you're just like toughing out, like I got to eat some more spinach, collard greens or something. You just like choke it down. For a lot of people, that's what evangelism is. It's like the reluctant, like, okay, you know, do you believe in Jesus? Where if somebody shared the gospel with me that way, I wouldn't want to believe it either. But when the sharing comes out of a robust relationship, it's powerful, isn't it? See, Paul just met with Jesus on the road to Damascus. And now he's just like, look, man, Jesus, I didn't know it. I didn't realize it. I was wrong. He's the Son of God. He is the Christ. True evangelism is birthed out of a robust, vibrant relationship. That's how it happens. All the time people say, how do we do evangelism? For me, doing evangelism has everything to do with having a real relationship with God that is radically impacting to our lives. Not just, I just believe it. You know, I go to church, do a little service, read my Bible a couple times. No, but a real relationship. A relationship that is so impacting on our lives that when someone says, what's up? You just say, listen, man, this is what's up for me. See, relationships, I mean, you guys have been to weddings before, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad times. See, God doesn't become less glorious in tough times. God doesn't become less glorious in lean financial times. God isn't greater in good times. God is God all the time. And for us as believers, we need to fight for that relationship. Because there's so many things that want to get in the way of that relationship. And right now, I'm sure that there's some of you that there's things right now, and I say that, you're like, man, that thing is doing battle against my relationship with God. I was just telling Lynn yesterday, I'm going to write an article about how being a pastor is ruining my spiritual life. You might say, being a pastor, listen, everybody struggles and problems. And listen, I'm not saying don't tell me, but it's like, it hurts when I hear people are hurting. It's hard. And when the phone rings 1,000 times a day and the email, I'm not saying this so that you don't call and email. I'm not saying that. But it's so easy to internalize all these things. And then as a pastor, you're like, well, do we have enough communion cups? Oh, do we have this? Oh, do we have that? Are we making budget? Are we going to lose our lease? Are we going to do this? There's a million concerns, and all of them good because we're serving God and God's birthed the community. But those things can do battle against my spiritual life. Those things, the concerns of the day, very real, very important concerns, can come and just choke out my simple enjoyment in God, because then all of a sudden, me and God have a business relationship. You guys who are married know this especially. Those of you guys who have dated people, you know what it's like when you get into a business relationship. Where I show up to God and I say, God, listen, let's talk about the church, Lord. Let's talk about the failing sound system. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that, rather than just being like, oh God, you are just the coolest person I've ever met. It's so easy in a marriage. Just do your roles. Talk about the roles stuff. Marriage becomes a business relationship. Friendships become business relationships rather than vibrant relationships. Paul was so impacted by his relationship that he shared. And the people were just totally amazed by this guy. They were totally amazed at his sharing. Now look what happens in verse 23. Now after many days were passed, the Jews plotted to kill him. And their plot became known to Saul, and they watched the gates day and night to kill him. Then the disciples took him by night and let him down through the wall in a large basket. Now, this is our fear in evangelism right here, that people aren't going to like us. And now we live in a civilized culture, or it seems to be. Sometimes I wonder, you watch cable TV, either political shows or economic shows, I'm starting to wonder about how civilized America is. Because it's like people can't disagree without name-calling at this point. But this is our fear in evangelism, right? That people just aren't going to like us. You know what's amazing? Everybody shares their beliefs all the time. All the time. Everybody, in effect, is trying to proselytize somebody. You can't have a conversation without thinking your view is correct and wanting to impart that view. That's life, isn't it? That's advertising. That's marketing. You know, you're sitting in Whole Foods or whatever, and you're just like looking, and there's like 900 types of whole grain cereal. And you're looking at them, and just like, do I buy Kashi? Do I buy this? Do I go to the bulk section? And then someone comes, oh, that one's my favorite. And they give you their reasons why. That's proselytizing. They're trying to win you over to their point of view. You look on every political show, that's what it's about. People trying to change each other's ways of looking at the world, thinking their way is right. So some people all the time are like, well, I don't want to tell people about Jesus because they might get mad at me. But what's amazing is only Christians are the ones scared about people getting mad at them for their views. Did you ever see the Dalai Lama up there? Listen, I know I shouldn't share about my Buddhist beliefs, but I just think you guys won't like me. I've never heard that out of the Dalai Lama's mouth. Nobody with spiritual beliefs are concerned about people not liking them except for Christians. What's up with that? Did you ever think that sharing the gospel is the only message in the world that has all of the demonic spiritual realm against it? The only message you can share with anyone that has spiritually demonic opposition is that Jesus is the Christ. Only one.